All right. Hey there, Coach. Jonathan Edwards here. This has probably been forwarded to you, the link or the video directly. So I just wanted to take a second and say, first off, like, thanks for being a lacrosse coach. I've been in and around the sport of lacrosse for a very long time. Started coaching lacrosse goalies right out of high school, which was in 1992, which makes me like 106 years old. So bear with me. I want to start by saying that who's ever forwarded this to you, um, is has one thing in mind, and that is the development of their goalie in such a way that they're not beaten out of the game. They don't develop fear of the ball, and they really want to succeed. And so that's usually the thing that brings us together is that who's ever sent you this video or whoever, however you've come across it, that's the goal. And so I want you to know real quick that that's what I'm all about. So for me personally, like, let me just share you a little bit about my background, just so we can kind of maybe find some common ground. Okay. So first of all, I'm born and raised just outside of Boston. My parents were two musicians. Okay, in fifth grade, I fell in love with the sport of lacrosse. I also played soccer and ice hockey and a little bit of baseball as well. Um, I was not a gifted athlete. I don't have any older brothers or sisters to kind of help me, toughen up or things like that. So I developed a love of sport, but really not gifted with a body with which to really make it happen. But along the way, I graduated as a high school American and Division I recruit. I also went to the Olympics in the sport of luge. I get it, like, totally bizarre, totally unrelated. But to this day, okay, so now in fast forward to 2022, um, I run a website called lacrossegoalieuniversity.com. Used to be called lacrossegoalietips.com, and I've been coaching goalies kind of virtually online since we started kind of the internet back in like the 2000s, right? Early 2000, 2001. So since that time, goalies across the country of varying ages and abilities, all the way from the PLL on down, have sent me video. I mean, it was VHS tape back in the day, and now it's virtually online. And I coach goalies all across North America and sometimes globally, which is kind of fun. Worked with a couple of European goalies. But in addition to that, I run a website called athletespecific.com, and I teach performance, like not just mental performance, but sports performance to athletes in a variety of sports. So I'm not your typical lacrosse coach. I'm not just kind of dyed in the wool like lacrosse guy. I'm very much about developing performance with young athletes who have big athletic dreams. So whether they want to be D1 lacrosse, or let's say they're hockey or equestrian, or I've worked with gymnasts and go-kart racers and you name it. And I also wrote a book over my shoulder here called An Athlete's Guide to Winning in Sports and Life, which hit number 2 in sports psychology way back in the day. Okay, so enough about me. Let's talk about you, lacrosse goalies in general, and specifically the idea about shin guards, and also a little bit just kind of about protection as a whole. Okay, so um, I believe 100% so that I I don't think there's anybody else in the sport of lacrosse that, and this is a big claim, but I can back it up. I think there's nobody in the sport of lacrosse who's had more kind of heartfelt discussions with parents of goalies than me. Okay, so just by sheer volume and how long I've been doing this, um, I just I just don't think there's anybody else that has that. So with that, I've worked with goalies who have gone on to great success. I've also had worked with goalies that have bombed out, and I believe that we're at a crossroads. Okay, so I don't know, who you are or how old you are, but I'll make some speculations here that that if you are one of those coaches that thinks that shin guards make you slow, you fall in a couple categories. One is you think goalies are soft if they wear protection. And I'm gonna encourage you to kind of drop that idea, because I don't look at protection as as like, if a kid wears padding, they're soft. Um, I I look at protection as a tool, and we'll get to that in a minute. But fundamentally, so we have like a spectrum of coaches. On one end, it's like, okay, goalies need to toughen up, and they should toughen up now. It doesn't matter what age they are; they just need to suck it up. Oh, they got to learn how to get hit with the ball eventually. True, but you don't go into a weight room and try to bench press like 300 pounds before you can bench press like 75 pounds, right? So the idea here is that we can get a goalie to that phase, okay? But It doesn't have to happen tomorrow. And actually, I'll argue that it doesn't have to happen forever because we can use protection as a tool. But primarily, a lot of times the coaches that say that they look at a goalie and they're frustrated with their goalie. They wish their goalie was better. And it doesn't matter what the age is. Your goalie can be U6 or U16. It doesn't matter because what ends up happening as a coach is that I want you to understand something. There's three keys to for a goalie to make any save. And again, it doesn't matter if this is a PLL goalie or a goalie who's like 5 years old. Okay, it's the same. The first thing that needs to happen is a goalie needs to see the ball, right? If you can't see the ball, you can't stop the ball. Now, that doesn't mean that your goalie has a vision problem. Those are rare. It happens occasionally, but in my experience, about like maybe like 1% of goalies actually have a vision issue where getting glasses or a change of prescription can help that, right? So it's 1%. But the idea here is that if you can't see the ball, you can't stop it. Like think about it. Like if the ball is screened and you never see it go by it, it's in the net. Or if you see it and then it's blocked for a while, well, that can also affect you, right? So you got to see the ball in order to stop the ball, right? The second thing that has to happen, okay, there's three things that have to happen to make a save. The second thing is you got to know where it's going. Okay. Now, for a lot of goalies learning how to play the game, what ends up happening is that there's what I call they're learning the language of lacrosse. They're learning the language of shooters. Okay. And so lacrosse, in my opinion, is one of the most complicated. It's one of the most complicated sports with which to coach, and that's part of your frustration with your goalie, especially if you're working with a whole team. Is you're like, oh, geez, the last thing you see is the goalie when the ball goes in the net, right? But you don't always realize, and I'm just a little tangent here. You don't always realize like the missed ride that the attack made, the missed ride that the midi made, the bad pass, this, that, and the other thing. But the idea here is that when it gets finally to the goalie and that shot happens, okay, the idea there is that the goalie needs to understand what that ball does when it leaves the stick, and this is true for both the boys and the girls. Okay, so so if you're a coach and you shoot on your goalie every day in practice and you use one certain shooting motion and you're an adult, like you might be a high school kid or a college kid, but if you're different than the kids that they see every day, well, they're learning almost like a different dialect of shooters. Not every shooter is the same, right? Getting shot on by a Division One All-American, some goalies will tell you, is easier than getting shot on by like that little kid in junior high. Okay, there's a consistency of shooter, and so your goalie is learning what I call the language of lacrosse and the language of shooters. Then what happens is that third key to making any save is the moving in front of the ball. Okay, now here is where I want to talk a little bit and help you understand what your goalie is going through, but also help you with your frustration that you may be having with your goalie. Because sometimes you can have a decent team and you might have a weak goalie, or you might perceive that goalie as not being up to speed or up to par. And I want to explain to you kind of what's happening and the frustration that you're finding. Okay, so that third key, right? So see the ball, know where it's going, and then move in front of the ball. Here's a couple things to think about. One, field lacrosse is the only sport, right? Any sport where the goalie is basically taught to save things with one hand. Okay, so that top hand that holds the stick, goalies are taught to try to move their stick to every save, right? Stick side high, stick side hip, off stick hip above the belly button, off stick hip below the belly button, stick side low, off stick low, whatever. Goalies are taught to try to catch everything. We're the only sport where we teach goalies like that. Okay. If you went to a soccer goalie and said, okay, you're going to go out there today, and you know what? I think the best way for you to make saves today is with your right hand. Oh, well, coach, what do I do with my left hand? Well, you're just going to put it down here somewhere. They would call you crazy. Okay. Even if you shrunk the net for soccer and you made a 6x6 net and you said, okay, goalie, you can only use your right hand, he'd be like, why? Or she'd be like, why? I've got two hands to make a save. In ice hockey, same thing. You may see an ice hockey goalie reach across their body to catch a puck with their catching glove, but that only happens when the puck is shot from so far away or at such a speed where they can do that. But even then, a lot of goalies will just block it away, right? So you look at field hockey or handball or things like that, and you go like, okay, wait, we're the only sport that does that. That's kind of odd. Okay. Now, I've been talking about this for 25 years. And what happens is I run into a culture issue, okay, a culture issue where coaches go like, yeah, that's a good idea, but yeah, we're still going to do it this way. The question is why? All right, why are you going to stick to kind of an old way of doing things? And this, unfortunately, is like the rehashing of coaching philosophy in the sport of lacrosse. Okay, it doesn't make any sense. Now, what I know, Coach, you'll agree with me on, is when was the last time you moved in on your goalie? Right. A lot of times in practice, what'll happen is a coach will shoot. Let's say it's 15 yards. They'll dump the balls right in the middle of the top center, boys or girls, and they'll just start firing away on the goalie. But they'll never keep firing away, but move in. Why don't we do that? Well, the reason we don't do that is because a lot of coaches think they're going to hurt the goalie. And in reality, you probably will hurt the goalie if you hit them with one, because as an adult, if you hit a goalie in the cage and you hit them in the upper arm or in the thigh or in the shin, you can probably get away with that once and kind of go, oh, that sucks. Sorry, goalie. But, just shake that one off. But why are we apologizing? Because that's exactly the thing we want to have happen come game day. We want a goalie in the cage who's going to be able to absorb the ball wherever it hits them, right? And this is where I've really tried to kind of change the narrative for lacrosse and go, okay, let's think about this for a second. You'll agree with me that at some point the ball is shot from too fast or too close that the goalie can get their stick on the ball, right? The head of their stick on the ball. So then the question is like, what is the goalie supposed to do? Okay, so I wrote up a thing that I give to all my lacrosse goalies that come to Lacrosse Goalie University and they sign up for the newsletter. They get a thing called the Lacrosse Goalie Manifesto, and what it basically says is that I, the lacrosse goalie, have signed up to get in the cage and put something. Doesn't have to be the stick head. Anything. It can be my elbow. It could be my knee. It can be my well, I joke a little bit, but the bottom line is the job of the goalie is to get something in front of the ball before it crosses the goal line. That's the deal. So to either stop the ball or tip or deflect it or redirect it somehow, it doesn't matter what it is. Okay. So that is what we sign up as goalies, but we don't really teach that in practice. A lot of coaches they'll shoot, and they'll work in an arc and they'll do stuff like that, but they're never going to teach a goalie that tipping point where we go from, okay, the ball's coming from too close for you to get your stick to make that save off stick hip. What are you going to do? Well, the answer there is we're going to put our glove in front of the ball or our elbow. Well, you might get your goalie to do that once, or you might just get your goalie to tap out right there and say, Coach, you're crazy. I'm not doing that. Well, wait a second. If there's 5 seconds left to go in the game, it's the national championships and we want to win, and you get a shot to that, can you make that save? And this is where I say that the lacrosse goalie, the lacrosse goalies that we see, as much as I love all the lacrosse goalies we see at the PLL level, the Division One level, I believe we have not seen the best goalies yet play this game because they have grown up in this sport underprotected. A lot of times by coaches who look at them and go, God, I wish you were faster. I wish when it comes down to that third key of moving in front of the ball, you were faster. But what they're saying, and coach, you might be saying the same thing, is that I wish they could get their stick to their ball. But then when you think about what I just explained, you're like, no, I wish they would put anything in front of said ball, right? Right? That's the deal. Man, boys, girls, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the level. U6, U16, U10 in the middle, whatever. You just hope your goalie is going to sell out and put something in front of the ball. The irony here is that a lot of coaches, if I put them in the cage and shot on them and gave them the equipment that they're kind of wishing their goalies would wear because they want them to be as fast as possible, those coaches would never do that. They would never put themselves in harm's way like that. Yet they're asking that of their goalies. Okay. So let's just talk a little bit more about that third key. Okay. Moving in front of the ball. So when you think about moving in front of the ball, there's a couple things that has to happen. One, the brain is the eyes are seeing the ball and they're starting to learn where that ball is going. Then wherever that ball is going on the goalie, okay, stick side high, stick side hip, you name it, wherever it's going to be, like stick side low, the idea is that then a signal goes from the eyes to the brain and says, okay, I know where that ball is going. Now we need to move in front of that space. In my opinion, the old outdated way of thinking about making a save is that idea of like we're just going to get our stick there. When we adopt a more holistic approach to a goalie making that save, Well, now what do we put there? Okay, let's say it's off stick low, right? What do we need to put in front of that ball? Well, maybe it's the foot or the shin or the knee. Hey, maybe it's a bouncer and we're going to take it. It's going to end up like we're going to misread a little bit. So we're going to take it off our elbow. Well, the question is like, okay, you may be able to shoot a ball there and have the goalie make one save like that. Again, we just understand they can't get their stick there fast enough. What do we got to do? Well, we got to put that unprotected leg that you may be asking your goalie to put there in front of the ball. Now, listen, I get it. You look at a PLL goalie and they're throwing it, they'll throw out a leg out there on game day, but I'll guarantee you this, they're not doing hundreds of repetitions of that in practice. And so therefore, in my opinion, they're not world class. They would be world class if they could take rep after rep after rep because they're protected. Okay, that's the deal. Rep after rep after rep because they're protected. You watch baseball catchers, and if you go to my website, if you come join our Facebook group, I talk about this all the time, and I give examples. You look at baseball catchers doing up downs like from their knees, blocking balls, boom boom. Ice hockey goalies down up down. Soccer goalies thousands of repetitions. Field lacrosse goalies, by comparison, don't spend nearly like I wouldn't even say a tenth of the repetitions that other goalies may do in their practices because they're underprotected. Okay, and so when you look at your goalie and wish they were faster, here's the deal: that there's a component of moving in front of the ball, which is strength. It is speed. It is and how do we get there? We train for it. That's why you can see a baseball catcher in full-on baseball shin guards sprinting. And I've got a couple examples like of goalies of catchers sprinting to catch fly balls or to outrun a base runner in a pickle, right? There's that player has trained for that. Their legs have gotten stronger. And what does that take? Well, one, it takes a culture shift. And two, it takes patience. And three, it takes training, right? It takes, okay, listen, goalie, you're going to run. The other thing about field lacrosse, when you think about it, okay, when you really, really think about it, I mean, I love a good goalie goal, you know, probably more than anybody. But I also understand when we're trying to prioritize. Are we trying to prioritize a goalie sprinting downfield? Or are we trying to prioritize a goalie who can stop the ball? Because if you can't stop the ball, you're not going to get the chance to clear the ball, right? Or sprint downfield. So out of your frustration, coach, you may look at your goalie and think, oh, geez, the less equipment you have, the faster you'll be, the faster you can run. I don't think that's really true when you think about it. One, you got to ask yourself, how much do I really need this kid to run? Right now, it's true with like younger goalies, there's lots of opportunity to run. But for the most part, is that really what you're training for? No, coach. You're not trying to train to get your U10 kid to win now. You're trying to train that kid to make it to the next level. And what are we doing there? Well, we're trying to eliminate the fear because the second the fear goes into this equation of seeing the ball, knowing where it's going, and moving in front of it, there's a lot of learning happening there. And when the brain goes into what's called high beta, right? That's the stress response when the brain like just gets hijacked. Your goalie's not learning. So you may tell your goalie, "Hey, take off those shin guards. I don't want you to wear them because they make you slow." Well, and then that kid steps in the cage again, boys or girls, and now they're afraid. Okay, they're afraid because you haven't progressed them at all. Okay, and you can also scare a goalie just by using tennis balls, but that's another conversation. But tennis balls are always good. But the idea is that if that goalie in the cage, if their brain is hijacked, right? And this is the tricky part, coach. They may not know that they're hijacked. They might look like they're toughing it out, but there's a second they're like, if there's that fear, that hesitation, well, now that goalie's not learning. Now you're wasting reps, coach. You're totally wasting reps. Okay. So in your attempt to make your goalie like run faster, you're actually ruining their development for the thing that you want them to do the most, which is stop the ball, right? Stop the ball. Now I would encourage you, coach, to get in the cage again. And this is a tough one. If you were a goalie, okay, and you manage to make it through to the collegiate level and you're looking at all the kids you're coaching right now and go like, "Oh, the shots I faced were way easier than this." I'm going to argue this with you, coach, is that I can make you a better goalie because what I would do with you is I'm going to ask you this question. Hey, coach, do you understand one thing? Like, do you agree that there's times when the ball gets shot from too close or too fast that you can't get your stick head on it? And you would have to agree with me, yes. If you didn't, I would like you're crazy, and you should just go away, right? Because you're not going to be able to develop anybody with that attitude. And think about this for a second, coach. Do you believe that sometimes the balls are shot from too fast or too close that the goalie can get their stick on it? The answer is yes. Then I would ask you this, coach. Let me ask you a question, coach. What do you do? What are you going to do to make that save? Let's say it's off stick hip. What are you going to do to make that save, coach? How are you going to make that save if you can't get the head of your stick there? You're going to give me an answer, all right? And it better be not, oh, I'm just going to let it go by me. That's not what we want from our goalie. The question is like, well, what are you going to put there? You will probably come up with the answer like it's going to be your hand or your elbow. Let's say it's a little lower. Let's say it's like below the knee. What are you going to do, coach? How are you going to make that save? You'll probably come up with an answer resembling something of a kick save. Great. Okay, coach, we're going to work on that today. Well, and you might go like, I haven't played goal in a while. Well, that's okay. Like we'll start out slow. You were adults. Like let's do it. Right now, you're gonna get in the cage and you're gonna be reluctant because you're gonna be like, I know that this is gonna hurt. All right, so we're gonna shoot the ball, and I'm gonna shoot it off stick low. And you're gonna get your shin there, and the first one you're gonna go like, you might be the toughest guy, tougher than a box of rocks. I get it. We're gonna make a couple shots there. You'll shake them off a little bit, and then you'll get back in the cage. And I'm saying like, well, coach, do you agree? How many repetitions do you think it takes to be world class in anything? And the answer will probably come up with a few thousand repetitions. Well, guess what, coach? We're gonna work on that today, right? We're gonna knock out like 100 of them. Like 100 is fine. What do you think? And you would probably get through like 5 balls, and then you would be so lit up that what'll happen is that you're gonna limp out of practice. You're gonna limp tomorrow. You're not gonna really like coming back. Now imagine if you were like 6 or 8 or 10 or 12, and that was going through your head. You're probably not gonna be sticking around as a goalie very long. Okay, so coach, here's the deal: protection. It's not a sign that your goalie's weak. It's not a sign that they're soft. Yes, if they're young, does that equipment bog them down? Sure. Just like a baseball catcher would go through that a little bit. Okay. But the thing is that we don't need that goalie to be sprinting around the field, right? It's great if they can. That's okay. I want that goalie in the cage, fearless. So, how do we create fearlessness? One, we can hope that our goalie just comes and develops that on their own, but that's not coaching. Okay. You can't coach crazy, right? And a goalie who just shows up and they have total disrespect for their body, that's crazy. I can't rely on that. You may have one kid like that, but you can't teach other kids that. Okay. The other thing is that we can hope that they come fearless, but that's unrealistic. Then what do? Well, we could shoot from further away, right? We could shoot from further away, give them more time to react to the ball, right? Well, that's one thing. But that's, on when the game comes, well, the kids are just going to be shooting right on top of the goalie, most likely, right? That's going to happen a little bit. And also, we can't tell the other team, hey, guys, would you mind just shooting all the balls from outside 16 and a half yards? Because 16 and a half, inside 16 and a half, my goalie like freaks out, right? Like it just doesn't work for him today. So like just if you could do, you can't do that either, right, coach? So now in practice we could use tennis balls, right? And that's a good choice because you can probably move in a little bit and that'll take some of the fear away. But even with a tennis ball, you can move in too close and you can sting a goalie, right? You can totally sting a goalie. And you know how I know that? In tennis, in junior tennis globally, right? Billions of dollars spent on tennis. They've developed bigger balls, softer balls, shorter courts. Why? Because tennis players have fear, right? Now I can guarantee you this, that Italian junior tennis player that's U8 or U10 is probably not much different than the U10 kid that's in your lacrosse net today. Okay. But again, we can't use tennis balls on game day. I mean, sometimes you can. If it's a scrimmage, little guys, you can try that. But, you get into junior high or high school, it's not going to fly. The other teams would be like, dude, whatever. We're going to totally pepper your goalie. Right. But here's the deal. Now, so we've exhausted those options. Now, what if we are going to shoot from inside? What if we're going to use lacrosse balls? What can we do for the goalie? Right. And the thing we can do for the goalie is we can protect them. Okay. We can pad them up. We can put shoulder caps on them. We can put shoulder pads over their chest protector. We can we can have them wear baseball shin guards, which is my favorite because why? Because millions of dollars have been spent on the development of that piece of equipment. In field lacrosse, we're lucky if we get a few $100,000 a year spent on tech and R&D, right? It just doesn't happen. And I've got plenty of people in my Facebook group and kids that I've coached and parents that I've worked with who will tell you that, who've been in those industries, right? So we don't have that in lacrosse. So a baseball shin guard um, is they're easy to buy, they're readily available, and they cover the top of the foot, and they cover a little bit of the inside of the leg, and they cover almost like halfway up the thigh for some kids, and so the idea is you can go to, like, every parent of your goalies can go out tomorrow and get on Amazon, and they can probably find a local baseball retailer, and they can size them up and wear them, and you spend a little bit of money on them, and they fit fantastic. And you know what? Your kid's going to be able to sprint in them too, right? Because why? That's what baseball catchers do, right? You look at ice hockey goalies, like young ice hockey goalies who wear like those big, I was an ice hockey goalie. The pads now, they're big and clunky still, but you see a kid who can skate in them because they've trained for it, they're gone. They can skate almost as fast as other players. Okay. So I want you to keep that in mind. We can pad up the goalie. And what happens when we protect the goalie? Do we lose a little bit in running speed? Sure. But do we need that? Not really. Not really. I want my kid in the cage, fearless, watching every ball you throw at them, coach, and learning that, okay, I want to see the ball. I want to learn what that ball is doing. When you shoot overhand, when you shoot sidearm, when you shoot with a stick, with a pocket or without a pocket, I'm learning. That brain is going like, okay, I'm learning all this stuff. I'm learning my response, my save. I'm developing my save library to your shot library. That's what we're doing. And I want my goalie to be as fearless as possible in practice so that they can focus on that ball. So that come game day, guess what? It's all automatic, because that's how the brain works and that's how the body works. Is the eyes see something, the brain sends a signal to the body, and the body responds. All right. If there's fear in there and it's iffy, or if there's a hesitation, goalie's got no chance. And so, coach, listen, um, I've gone a lot longer than I planned to, but if you're watching me right now, first of all, I commend you, because really my whole thing is about changing the game of lacrosse one goalie at a time. And fundamentally, we have a problem in our sport. We have this culture of that, oh, pads make you slow. That's not true. That's not true. Right. And I can take any goalie today. I can take the best goalies in the game and I can prove it. Right. I can prove it tomorrow. Right. So maybe you're one of those best goalies in the game. I will have you crying like a baby. Okay. You're not going to want to come back to me, but I'll go like, listen, you know, um, these shots happen on game day, right? Right. So how are you going to be world class? You just going to hope that someday you're going to you're all of a sudden your brain's going to shut down and you're going to be able to make that save? Maybe, but that's not trained. That's not world class. That's a hope, right? So, coach, I want you to understand something. That culture that we have in the field lacrosse of that goalies need to be tougher. Like, oh, and because there's still coaches, man, that played back in the '80s and the '70s even. And they're like, oh, I didn't even wear a chest protector. They had to make a rule. Uh, Dude, okay, great, but listen, man, times have changed. We know more about development. Back then, it was all about who could be tougher, right? That's not that's not world class. Okay, so I want you, coach, to understand something. Is that your goalie, when they're in that cage, they're developing that understanding of the shooter's library, the understanding of the shot library, the save library behind it, and we're trying to do that in as safe an environment as we can. Because I guarantee you this, coach, if you adopt that philosophy, your goalies will get further, they will get better, faster, sooner than if you try to beat them down. Because if you beat them down and say like, oh, the take off those shin guards, they make you slow when you run. Well, what happens when they're trying to get in front of a ball, right? And coach, I'll leave you with something that's it's a little tough, but you know, go to Home Depot. Go to Home Depot and get a rubber mallet. Right, they're about this long. I don't know if you can kind of see this. They're the length of a hammer, and on the end they have a white rubber mallet on the end, and it kind of looks like a lacrosse ball. Kind of feels like a lacrosse ball too. Now, I want you to give that mallet to a friend of yours. Don't give it to a wife or a husband or anything like that, or a sibling. Give it to somebody who's like arm's length, and I want you to give it to him, and then I want you to say like, okay, I want you to hit me with that mallet right here, right, the spot between the delt and the bicep, like right here. How hard? As hard as you can. Because, coach, understand this: they're going to take their hand with that little mallet and they're going to whack you. But you know a thing called leverage, right? Well, a lacrosse stick is 40 inches long. That ball's coming out there with way more leverage than your friend will ever be able to whack you with that ball peen hammer. Now, you might think I'm a little crazy, but when you just kind of go like, wait a second, that's kind of what's happening here. Um, I think there's almost a case, and this might get a little bit too difficult for you, but I think there's a case where coaches fire balls at lacrosse balls at kids and hit them and hurt them. Yet if they were on the end of that rubber mallet, they get they get arrested for abuse. I mean, if you think about it, right? So, but here's the deal: go have your friend hit you here once, right? Then have him do it again, right? Maybe 3 times there. Then pick some other spots where you would be unprotected if you were in that cage, right? And I will guarantee you will have a change of heart here. You'll be like, I don't care how slow this makes me running. All right, I want to protect myself in front of that ball because I can guarantee you, coach, your goalies will be better, faster, sooner than you can imagine if you take this attitude. So, and if for some reason you disagree with what I've said here, um, wherever this video is posted, do me a favor, leave a comment. You can send me an email, you can reach out to me, you know, and I'll be happy to just kind of continue the conversation because this conversation is what's going to change the game. The people that say like, oh, goalies need to toughen up at some point, you know what? Do they really? Because I'll show you saves at the highest levels of our sport where you can see a goalie who's basically cashed in, making a save because they didn't want to put their body in front of the ball. What's their body? Well, it could be their big toe, their ankle, their shin, their knee, their left testicle, their right ovary. I don't care. Like whatever. Like that's what we signed up for as goalies. Let's do it, right? We're gonna stop that ball, right? So, but are you coaching to that, coach? So, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Whoever sent this to you, go thank them too, right? Go thank them too because I can guarantee you this: if they've seen this video and then they go to you and you're not adopting this, like they're not going to be in your program very long. Just just a heads up. All right, take care.